Hello and welcome to Disney Travel Tales, a podcast that allows you to immerse yourself in someone's recent Disney trip. I'm Jenny, and I'm so happy to be here with you talking about my favorite thing, Disney trips. Join us every Friday as we explore the parks or cruise ships with a new guest and learn inside tips and tricks to hopefully help make your vacation go a little smoother. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening so you never miss a new episode, and I would love it if you left a positive review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. Another way to support the podcast is to use me as your travel agent at no cost to you. Email me at jenny@trolleylanetravel.com. Let me do all the hard planning while you sit back and count down the days to your vacation. Okay, so let's get going with today's show.
Getting to the place where it is not particularly well signed. If you put in the address, I don't know, I think that maybe there was two different addresses that we tried to put into the GPS. And one of them was from maybe the website, and one of them was directly from the email. And I think the one that was directly from the email was correct and did take us specifically there. But also, if you miss one turn, the way that the GPS tries to reroute you does not work. So if you miss it, then you have to basically start all over again. And you end up having to get on the freeway in order to do this circuit and all of these things.
Oh my gosh.
Ended up obviously experiencing all of that, otherwise I wouldn't know all of those things.
Right.
And so it was a little frustrating when we first arrived there because we had just done this whole driving circuit for maybe 15, 20, possibly even 30 minutes. But when we got there, it's complimentary valet, so they take your car for you because you're not even allowed to self-park. You have to let them have your car to the valet. But they also do bell services there where you get everything you want out of your car, put it on their little cart, and they deliver it to your room for you without you having to call down or anything like that. But they do it at a specific time at some point. And I think that time might even be after or during your first dinner sit down. And so the thing is scheduled like a cruise where you have a proper dinner time. So that was the only other plan that we had for the evening was this dinner time. But I'll back up a little bit and say months before we boarded this, our data pad, as I mentioned earlier from Hollywood Studios, changed a little bit. The comms got completely emptied of all the comms that I would have had from being in Galaxy's Edge, and it turned into only comms from the Halcyon Starcruiser. This comms from the captain, comms from just this thing titled CSL announcements, Chandrila Starline announcements, and it would give you some updates like, oh, your itinerary has been loaded into your data pad. Explore around the map that we've loaded of the Starcruiser into your data pad. And they always call your phone your data pad, so it's just my phone every time I say the word data pad. But it's all through the Play app on that whole separate app, not the Disney World app, the Play one. And it's a separate drop down from even Galaxy's Edge when you get in there for that. So you have to navigate a bit to find it. And they did have a video showing you how to do it, but I'm pretty tech savvy, so I just figured it out.
Yeah.
So that was crazy and cool to see all of that. So there were some itinerary things that were like, oh, this event starts at 6 p.m. and that's after my dinner time or during my dinner time, so I can't do this one and things like that. So we got to decide a little bit ahead of time some things we wanted to do. One of the things we wanted to do that was listed on there was they have, like, I guess I just want to call it a fashion show. They call it Outer Rim Regalia, and you're supposed to just dress up in your, like, Star Wars-iest to whatever, and then you show up to the main atrium, they call it, which is the same place where you first basically enter the Starcruiser. And I don't know what happens there because we showed up for it at the time it was scheduled for, and apparently it had ended 5 minutes prior. So the time on that one event was incorrect. Every other event we tried to make was fine on correct on the time, but for that one event, that one's only from like 7 to 7:15, I think, but it said it was from 7 to 7:30. So we were a little late, but it was because we didn't have our luggage the second we arrived to the hotel because we had to wait for it to get delivered. So we didn't finish getting ready until after dinner, and then it was a bit too much of a time crunch there. So I would recommend, if anybody is going for the rest of September, be ready when you show up. Just show up to the Starcuiser already set in whatever you're going to wear for the whole day and just commit to the whole day in that outfit. But yeah, so I had actually sewed us special like costume things for that, so I was kind of sad to not really wear them for their we wore them around anyway.
Yeah.
But I was a little sad to have not used them for the purpose I intended them for. But yeah, so when you get on, you have a little thing that says, this is what it sounds like when it's a fake emergency for the purposes of the show. And this is what it sounds like when it's a real emergency and you need to get out of the building.
That's funny.
And they're different. And it's actually a little confusing because it's good because so much of the Star Wars coloring is red and blue, right? And red is also usually what we think of as the get out of the building now color, but actually it's white. It's like if all of the main lights turn down and there's white lights everywhere, that means like there's a fire or something, get out. But if it's red, then it's part of the show and it's cool.
That's so funny.
So it was good that they had a video for that because that would have been very confusing, you know? So, yeah. But then... So we had a person that led us through that video and then on to an elevator, essentially, that's all decked out in Star Wars-y. They call it a launch pod. It's just an elevator. And we were willing to go into this experience with, like, we will play along, but we are also not so much Star Wars fans that we know the name of every planet or what... You know, I had to remember what a Kyber crystal was and stuff like we know stuff, but we're not crazy into it enough to be able to speak it fluently, basically. Right. But all the cast members speak it fluently. And they act like they have no idea what you're saying if you don't speak it fluently. So they ask us, oh, where are you from? And we're like, oh, we're from Oregon. And they're like, where's that? This happened several times. And so eventually we decided to get a little bit more meta with it. And we're like, oh, we're from Earth. Oregon's on Earth. Yeah. And no, apparently Earth still doesn't exist because Star Wars calls it like Aurelius or something like that. There's a special word that means the same thing as Earth in Star Wars. We do not know any of that. So we're kind of in that middle of the thing. We're happy to experience the show. We'll play along and have the conversation with you, but we're also not going to pretend that we're from Star Wars. Yeah. You know what I mean? Gotcha. So that always had a little bit of like some kind of suspension of disbelief as we were going through the experience, talking to people. It's like, yes, I'm just from Earth. It's just Earth. Just accept it. And at some point, one of the people was like, oh, yeah, I think some other passengers were from Earth. They said that's like in deep space. I'm like, sure, we'll go with that for the rest of this trip. Sounds good. So that was fun. But then you get off the elevator and there's a person that greets you and shows you to where your room is, even though I already knew where the room was because I looked at that map on my data pad for months beforehand. Yeah. But it was still good because you got to know where the stairs are. There's stairs and elevators. There's 2 main elevators that do the whole everything. And those are the only 2 elevators I ever found. And then there's 1 staircase that's broken up onto like 2 halves. So if you're going up, then you take it on the left side. If you're going down, you take it on the right side. And so there was some lay of the land, you know, you really had to learn about showing up to this self-contained park experience. It's not just, you know, in every hotel you're going to go in and not quite know your way around, but you had to learn it because you had to get from point A to point B sometimes. Yeah. You needed about those things. And those are some of my favorite things to learn about. I just am a nerd about learning new, I guess, geography or something. Yeah. I think it's fun. Pathfinding, wayfinding. So he led us to our room and we went in and there's a little There's a TV, a regular TV in the room, but the TV has the waiting screen on it that's all Star Warsified with the map of the ship and the route that you're taking with the ship, like how you would have the air travel, the plane travel lines when you're taking a regular flight. It showed you your orbit, basically, of the Starcruiser's trip. Yeah. And then there was a window that was not really a window, it was just another screen. But it was, again, similar to the Space 220, where they had just space things happening out there and stuff. So,
did it feel like you were in a spaceship?
Kind of. It definitely felt like you were on a set. Because the whole thing didn't never really feel like it was moving. Like, I've never been on a cruise, but I imagine that if you're on a cruise, you feel the boat moving a little bit to some extent. There's no movement. Like, you're stationary there. But it definitely felt like it was built to be a spaceship aesthetic. So everything is like just solid walls of, maybe plastic or fiberglass or something. It's not like a squared off edge anywhere. Everything's circular. Everything's orange accents seem to be the main color that they were going for in there, but it's very spacey. And it just felt, I don't know, like maybe smaller than I would have thought a spaceship would feel like, but it felt giant for a hotel, so it's fine. So again, kind of somewhere in between there, I think, for me. Mom really missed that they didn't have a window to the real outside. She likes to have the window open when we're sleeping, or just sometimes for a break, just some fresh air. And that's not in your room, but there is a place where you can go on board called the climate simulation room, and it's just an outdoor sitting area, just open to the 90-degree
That's nice.
Air. So you can get out if you're feeling like that claustrophobia is really getting to you, or you just need the fresh air.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the only place that you can go. You can't leave out the launch pod again until later. So, but it's good to know that was there. And your comms are blown up. Your comms on your data pad have a million messages coming in at you like, hi, my name is the captain. Hi, my name is the blip blip. Here's your dinner plan. Come to do all of your things. And so you're really just paying attention a lot to your phone and doing whatever they tell you to do. And there are stations built into the wall that you would use to like hack into systems to do missions that your data pad was telling you to do. And they would activate with the special magic band that they gave you just for the Starcruiser. It's like white and gold, and I don't think you can get it unless you're going on the Starcruiser. And your regular magic band does not work. You can only use the Starcruiser band during this period of time. But that band will activate everything that you need it to activate once you've gotten to the steps to unlock those missions. But those missions have so many layers. They're like, go to this station and tap your M band, they call it in your data, because they can't say magic. That doesn't Star Wars.
Right.
So it's your M band. And you tap it into the station, and then it's like you can click around and do stuff, just random things in there, and it'll tell you a mission to do. And there are 3 different factions, for lack of a better word. You can be resistance, you can be first order, or you can be a scoundrel. And scoundrels kind of signified with the purple color for things usually. And then resistance is blue and first order is red. Everybody knows that one. And so depending on kind of how you spend these first few hours there will determine what comms you continue to get for the rest of your stay on Starcruiser. And so if you tend to do stuff like hacking into something, then that might be a scoundrel or resistance sort of pull. And if you try to go somewhere that the first order, I was not a first order, Mom was not a first order, so we don't know about the first order things.
Yeah.
I don't know what they would have had to do in order to get a first order comm to activate, but during your first dinner, when you go to the dining room, you are seated at the same table. It's the same table you sit at every night, the 2 nights that you're seated there. Lunch and breakfast are free seating. You don't have to sit at your assigned table. You can sit anywhere, and they're just buffet style. But the dinners are at the same table, and you have the same server both nights, things like that. During the first dinner, we had a great server. He was very friendly. He again asked us our lovely "We're from Earth" question. We had to act like silly people. It was fun just to be forced to immerse into it. You know? And I had read before, like, it really, your experience on the event, it matters how much you want to immerse yourself. Like, if you just sit back and do nothing and you never look at your data pad, maybe it's not worth the event of going to this whole thing. But if you do all the things, it is totally worth it.
Yeah.
And so we were committed to at least doing all the data pad things that we could figure out how to do. And so, yeah, we were messing around with some of the missions on our phone before dinner, and we got some places, but nowhere crazy. And then we went to dinner. And dinner was weird. I can't, no getting around that fact. Dinner is just, all the food is weird there because they try to give you like a hint of a, like they'll say tip yip and then some thing that goes with chicken. And you're just supposed to know that tip yip means chicken now.
Gotcha.
So then any other time when you saw tip yip, you knew it meant chicken and you were safe there. Or what it was called, I think there was like bantha beef was also the name of something. And then you knew it was beef. Didn't matter that bantha doesn't mean anything to me and Mom, but you knew it was, you know, the beef part of the meal. And we had put on our dietary restrictions that we don't do seafood. So there were seafood things that other people got that we did not get because we were not going to eat them. And they came out and it was a full 3-course thing like any other sit-down reservation would be at Disney World proper. There was some, like, they do a lot of fusion things. It felt very, like, Asian fusion, American kind of foods that they were doing, trying to put it out there a little bit, but not so far out there that people didn't, you know, recognize what they were eating. There was another short rib situation here. It was delicious. It was great. The tip yip situation, also great. They had little bao buns with, one had like a spicy vegetable thing in it, and then there was a beef one and a chicken one. And so the beef one and the chicken one were fine. I think that maybe the chicken one had like a curry in it and not sort of Indian inspired, not my vibe. So that one was, so I ended up eating, I think, mostly the beef one. And then I tried the vegetable one because I like an egg roll or something, but there was no warning on anything that anything was ever spicy, and I hated my life after eating that.
That's so weird that they would serve something really spicy.
Yeah, it's
that's a very acquired taste.
Yeah, it's a weird choice the way that they decide to do the dining there without having. I was scrounging the internet trying to find menus before, and there's a couple pictures of them, but they do not have a menu for you that you can read while you're eating the things on board. And so you have to just trust that everything's fine. And they give you a little bit of a warning when they say, like, welcome to dinner. The chefs come out and speak to you sometime. Welcome to dinner. You know, basically suspend some disbelief and just try new things. And it's like, at some point I need some sustenance.
Yeah.
So, you know?
I just want some real food.
Yeah. But the chicken and beef options were pretty much always safe for me and Mom. So that was good. Sometimes they brought us like a tofu thing at one time instead of the fish option. And neither me nor Mom do tofu either. And so we just noped out of that option. But it was nice that they were trying. And there was a ton of it. Every time they brought it out, it felt like they brought every table the same amount of food, regardless of how many people were at the table. So if you had a table of 4, I feel like that was an appropriate amount of food. But there was 2 of us. Yeah. And so we were fine to just be sharing it. And we didn't have to share a table with other people. I've heard, like, on cruises, you have, like, a table with several groups, right, that you share with. Our table was just our table. It was nobody else's.
That's nice.
That was good. And then while we were at dinner, there was a show happening. There was this lady, and she was singing. She sang, like, 4 or 5 songs. Her name was Gaia. She was one of the main characters on the ship. And she was, I'm going to mispronounce this, like a Twi'lek or something. It's a species in Star Wars. She's got the 2, like, ear trumpets. You know what I mean? Anyways, She was so cool. She was very superstar energy. It felt like you were at this VIP concert where she was singing to you while you're having dinner. And then there's some drama just happening in the corners while you're mostly watching her. But then you see some stormtroopers walk in some doors and out some other doors. You see the First Order captain, who you were told ahead of time that the First Order would be like investigating the ship while you were on board. You see the First Order lieutenant come in and go out some other doors, and you're like, what are these people doing? What's going on? You sort of have this air of mystery about it. And then Gaia has like a DJ lady, also going to butcher her name. It's like Olani or something. If you go to like a fandom wiki page, all of these people are real people that exist canonically in the Star Wars land, so you can look them up. But I am terrible at the name pronunciation. Anyways, then there was this not little kid, he was a grown man, but he was clearly like I'm missing a reference here, but the Romeo of the ship cast, you know, not the main character per se, but in like this romantic side character way, kind of. And his name was Sandro. And Sandro made it his mission to basically be our buddy for the entire time that we were on the ship. He wasn't like glued to our side or anything. He gave us plenty of our space, but we ended up encountering him several times as we made our progressions throughout things. He sat at our table at dinner that night. There's, a million other tables, but he came to our table and sat at our table to watch Gaia do her singing, and he's like a huge Gaia fan. He knows all of her songs, and it turns out it's not really that he's a big fan of Gaia. He's a big fan of the DJ lady. And so he and the DJ lady are trying to like have a romantic situation, and so Mom and I suspect that there are some AI people or real people observing our actions through cameras or something on the ship, and they decide that we're going to be the ones to experience this romantic backstory side character
That's
plot
probably true.
instead of some other plot instead. So that was really cute and fun. And then at some point, the lieutenant comes down again, the First Order lieutenant. He sat at the table next to the table that we were at, and Sandra was still there. And he was basically trying to sit in on Gaia's performance because it turns out the lieutenant was like a big Gaia fan. He's like fangirling over Gaia, which I still think might be some part of the First Order missions that I just don't know because I didn't pick the First Order line, if that makes sense. But anyways, Sandro gets called up by Gaia at some point to play his instrument because it turns out he plays kind of a guitar situation. And so then the three of them are up there doing something, and they're poking fun at the lieutenant for like randomly sitting in, and the lieutenant's kind of blushing. Lieutenant was very like quintessential old British guy vibes, and he was very good at playing it. So there's just like random things happening all around you while you're at dinner. There's so much to just look at and see, and depending on what missions you've aligned yourself with, you're going to experience those things differently. You're going to see those things differently. I think I did this a little out of order actually, but before dinner there was a muster, which people who are in the military know what that means. And my mom is married to somebody who was in the Navy for 6 years, and she knows what that means. I, however, do not know what that means. And I spent maybe like a whole day still not really understanding what that word meant. But we had a thing on our data pad that said, show up for your muster report. And so we showed up to the atrium where it told us to go. And they were like, oh, go to a muster station. I was like, I see no stations here. What is a state? What does that mean? Because we were not assigned one. It was just something that you just show up and then I guess you pick one. And so we just went to the back of the atrium and just like sat there. And eventually this Saja, which I think is like somebody who follows the way of the Force, came up to us and was like asking us like, do you know what your muster station is? And I was like, I don't even know what a muster station is.
You're like, step one, what is it?
Right. She asked us again where we were from, and I was like, still Deep Space Earth. You know? That was funny.
That's
and my
so
mom
funny.
knew at least like what a muster station was, and I guess she just let the Saja explain it to me. But I still didn't like get it. She was like, "Oh, you just like have to, report here if you're told to report here." And there was 4 of them. They were labeled A, B, C, and D, but the people with the labels were mingling around because it wasn't time to officially report yet. So I couldn't see the stations. I didn't know what was going on. And she was talking to me about it like it was a team, like you were always going to be on Team C if you picked Team C. But really, it only mattered for one other event that happened the entire time we were there. It probably would have mattered if we had a real-life exit also. I think you would have had to really report that. But I had no clue, and she still didn't help. She was like, "Oh, well, there's A, B, C, and D, so you have to just, like, pick one." And I was like, "And then what? Like, what's the difference? How do I, like, pick one?" She's like, I mean, I don't know. I think Team C is great because I'm the leader of Team C. That's where you're at right now. And I was like, Team C sounds great. And that was literally all I got. That was all I got. So now I know that means that that's the place where you go when you're going to do an important, like, evacuation or something. It's your group of people that you are assigned to evacuate with, as far as I can tell. Those words were not given to me. I was very confused for a long time about what my muster station meant.
That's so funny.
I thought that was a Star Wars word or something. I was already in there with the half in, half out thing. So muster station situation. Whatever, it was fine. We ended up having to call out our muster station. There was like a welcome to the ship thing where the captain and the cruise director, which I kept trying to call the cruise director the captain. Those are 2 different people. Again, having never been on a cruise, I don't know. Yeah. But the captain was some places, sometimes around the ship, but it was mostly the cruise director that we saw regularly. So after muster station, we actually had to go straight from the muster station into bridge ops training. And this was, again, still before dinner. So this is why we had no time to change, but once we got on board. And bridge ops training was like playing 4 different kinds of video games, but not like just any, like it wasn't like you were holding a Switch console and playing a Switch game. They had their own mechanics in each of them, but you were assigned yet another team, and I was still confused about muster station, but now I'm a blue bantha for whatever that means. But you were assigned, there was 4 different creatures and 4 different colors. We started at the weapons station, and you learned through somebody else who is supposedly an actual bridge engineer technician person each of the stations. And it was basically, if you have to fly the ship and the ship is not just running on autopilot, this is how you run each of these stations kind of thing. And so we started at weapons, and there was a simulation, and you were trying to do good enough in the simulation that you beat the Starcruiser's number, which must be some sort of average of how most people who play the game do, is my assumption, but don't know. We beat the Starcruiser's record for weapons.
Nice.
And moved from weapons to shields, and we, like, blew that number out of the water on shields, which shields was sort of like, I don't know if you ever played, I don't know, Snoods is probably really random, but it's like one of those games where the ball is coming and you have to move the bar so that you bounce the bar off and then it hits the cubes at the top or whatever. Yeah. That was very similar to the way that Shields played, and Mom and I have played these games for so much of our lives, so prepared for that one. That's Weapons so cool. Was one on the main screen where you were just, like, trying to shoot stuff, basically. There was one person who had to aim, and then the other person who had to shoot. And so if you were the shooter, you were just button mashing, but if you were aiming, then you were being a little more precise. So I was button mashing, and Mom was aiming. And then we played the ball bouncing one, and then there was one that was kind of like being an engineer in Smuggler's Run, where there's a screen and you have to match all of your buttons and levers to whatever the screen says the buttons and levers should look like. So if there's 3 yellow buttons lit up in a row, you have to press the buttons until all 3 are lit up in a row, and then it'll give you new missions as you go. And then there was this other one called Loaders. It's very confusing. It was another one that was essentially like aim and shoot, aim and grab, but you couldn't do both at once. So it was very complicated there. So they were fun. They were small little games. We did not beat the record on the Loader one, I think, but I think we beat the record on all of the other ones.
That sounds
so that was fun. And while you're in there doing that training, then the cruise director comes in and has to have this big announcement that Gaia hasn't boarded the ship yet. And apparently we have to go pick up Gaia. And so our first bridge ops training real exercise was to navigate an asteroid field to go pick up Gaia from her ice spa. Which is funny because Mom and I had just been at the spa earlier. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we were just there. We'll go get her. And then she came to the ship so that she could perform at dinner. And there's some other, she has a manager guy, his name's Wraith Cole, and he's like the main head scavenger person if you're doing the scavenger storyline. So he came in and had some voice lines. And some people got picked to like, can you remember this thing that Gaia told us to tell Wraith before she boards the ship? And the kid had to try to remember it and then tell it to Wraith later. And so he maybe got some extra special missions because of being that memory guy or something. Yeah. I don't know. Some fun things. Cool. And then, so then after dinner, we tried to get ready for the costume contest and did get ready for it. Didn't get to go to it. But while we were there, I think we saw this guy. His name's Sammy. Mm-hmm. And Sammy was another main character. He was clearly there to be the main resistance mission giver. And also during Bridge Ops training, you kind of found out that the cruise director is super resistance. She's like trying to hide it because she's just neutral cruise director, but she's definitely resistance. And so Sammy was the other resistance person. And we found Sammy because we saw Chewbacca.
Oh, so Chewbacca fun!
That was what happened. And we saw Chewbacca, we went to go say hi to Chewie, and then Sammy was like, Uncle Fred, what are you doing here? Like, you can't be this out in the open because the First Order is investigating the ship, and the First Order can't know that this Wookiee's on board and all of these things. And then eventually the First Order does find out the Wookiee's on board. The stormtroopers get him, and they put him in jail. And then one of the things you can do on that place where you tap your M-band that's built into the walls is you can get it to generate a code for the prison cell. And so Mom ended up, we did this several times, just randomly. We ended up being like the prison breakers on the ship, where Mom would tap her band and scream the code across to me from where the prison cell was to type it in because it was timed. That code expired in like 10 seconds. And so she would go to like the closest M-band station that she could and try to scream at me what the code was. And so at some point, Sandra was like writing a song or singing a song about how the First Order sucked, and he got thrown in jail too, and so we kept breaking people out of jail. And then our missions with Sammy and other missions told us to go to the engineering room, which is like, these are places you don't get to go on a normal cruise ship, right? Because they're for employees only. You get to go to this engineering room where there's more little games and stuff to do, and they correlate to your data pad missions as well. Very similar to the Bridge Ops training kind of games. And there's one game we kept trying to do in the engineering room that later we ended up being unimportant. It was good that we knew how to do that game because the other people we were paired with did not know how to play that game. So we got to lead the whole team about how to do stuff. So that was fun. And then at some point, Mom had seen like the cargo hold. There's like how to enter the cargo hold. And she got way on this train about the cargo hold that we could not get into. And the next day we finally got into it. I think she felt really relieved that she could get into it. But it was clear that like some things only unlock once you get to a certain point in whatever missions you've been given.
So you can't like advance in the, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey parents, do your kids listen to podcasts? Do they like solving mysteries and flexing their imaginations? Mysteries at Riddleton Elementary is a new children's mystery podcast. Your kid can join Billy Bonanza and Susie Sockington on exciting and wacky adventures as they attempt to solve mysteries around their school. Mysteries at Riddleton Elementary is available now on all podcast platforms.
And then after some more of those things, we had lightsaber training with the Saja, and lightsaber training was at like 9 p.m. So we had to stay awake, get after hotel hopping, going to the spa. Yeah. We were already tired, going from dinner to bridge ups to blah, blah, blah. We still had to make it till 9 p.m. So it was good, all those other missions and things were happening, because we were going to go to sleep at like 7 if lightsaber training wasn't so
right.
But it was, and I was sort of unenthused about it. I don't know. I thought going into it that it was going to be kind of lame. I was like, I don't want to flail around a lightsaber, but they actually made it into yet another game. It kind of felt like playing Wii tennis or something that. Like your little Wii controller and you're hitting stuff. And everybody was equally terrible at it, so it didn't really matter that anyone first. I thought it was maybe going to be like Tai Chi or like yoga or something. I was like, I really don't want to do that at 9 p.m. But it was not. It was lax. It was casual. It was fine. There was no problems. And at some point during it, they have like a Yoda voiceover that comes on and says, well, they have to see the light. They do, or something. And they turn off all of the things that you've been learning to train the lightsaber, like where you have to hit the lightsaber to block, or move the lightsaber to block a beam coming at you. And they end up having just like tiny little sparkles of light through what looks like some kind of soundproof wall or something. And I figured out pretty quickly that where the sparkle of light was the like part on the X, basically. It was 4 kind of corners that you might have to put it in. Wherever the sparkle was where you had to put it, even though all of your training mechanisms were gone. And nobody else seemed to get that. And I was like, the Force is really strong with me. But it was, I just listened to the words that Yoda said, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was weirdly really good at lightsaber training because of that, even though I wasn't that enthused to go into it. But it was fun, and the room is dark, and it was kind of, another just immersive, cool thing to do.
That is cool.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure after that we were, like, tired. But there's the worst part that happened. This is the worst part of the entire Starcuiser section. It's not even something the Starcuiser did, but we had that at 9, and I think it was just before that we were experiencing this, because somebody was coming off from second dinner, after our dinner, off of the elevator, and the elevator doors opened as Mom and I were walking across, pretty sure to jailbreak somebody again, and the kid just projectile vomits out of the elevator onto the floor.
Oh my gosh.
Mom and I made fun of it for the rest of the trip. Just bing, bleh.
Oh my gosh.
It was the most, movie thing ever to happen on this already immersive movie experience. Totally natural human behavior. The kid probably ate too much. He was 8 or 9.
Oh my gosh.
He just probably ate too much, or maybe the movement of the elevator really didn't agree with him. And it was horrible.
That's
but
awful.
It was so funny. And then Mom and I had crossed while that was happening, saw it, was like, what the heck, kept going. And then we had to go back that same way that we had come. We were like, oh no, what's going to happen? And they had stormtroopers posted up there so that nobody was allowed to get into that area.
There you go.
And then we had a janitor guy with a hazmat bucket.
That's crazy.
Oh, quality A+ movie set experience. Yeah. So yeah, every time we didn't really take the elevator. We were fine to take the stairs most of the time. If characters would go down the stairs or something, so we were mostly stairs, not elevators. But one time we took the elevator and it still kind of smelled like puke a little bit, whether from that kid or some other experience. We were like, no thanks. We're just gonna. No more elevator. Seriously,
that's so funny and gross.
So funny and so gross. But I had to mention it because it's too classic,
For sure.
But yeah, after lightsaber training, I think actually there was dessert there was like desserts that you could go to in the cafeteria. We were interested because dinner had been so interesting and what some of the desserts were. So we stopped back by the cafeteria. It was just buffet style again. And you could sit anywhere. And then we got a couple of little chocolatey, desserty things. They were very small and cute and thematic. Again, very vague ingredients. Like, they would say something. I can't remember what it would say, but it said like some word and then fruit jelly. And so you were like, okay, well, it's fruit and it's jelly, you know? And there's sometimes things that made me think like, oh, that's passion fruit jelly specifically. Like, I was able to translate that in my head, but it's not exactly saying passion fruit for you. So it was kind of weird. It would have taken so much time to write down every single name of every food item that I saw the label for. But yeah. So there was that. And then there's a little, also in your room, there's a tinier screen aside from the TV and your Windows screen that has a droid, little room servicey droid lady. And she just has some fun things to say throughout the whole trip. She doesn't ever give you a comm or a mission or anything like that to do, but she answers some questions. She'll tell you a bedtime story that is the droid's perspective of A New Hope. Like the whole plot line, but it's like, and then the biggest hero came out, R2-D2, and single-handedly killed Vader, or whatever. It's like, that is not what happened, but it's very cute that you think that.
That's cute.
So, and she had a lullaby that she said she wrote herself and sung to you. Her name was D3, and so I think she's maybe my new favorite droid. I'm big into the droids. I like R2 and C-3PO, and D3 is I think my new favorite. That's tied to C-3PO, but I want them to hook up. That'd be great.
There you go, and have a little droid baby.
Yes, that's so cute. And so the room had a queen bed for Mom to sleep in, and then 2 bunk beds, or just like a bunk bed situation with 2 beds in it. So I slept on the top bunk, and it's just a regular twin size situation, and Mom slept on the queen. Because again, we're adults, we can have our own beds. We don't need to share beds with each other. The bathroom situation is fine. It has a sliding door for the toilet, and then also the whole bathroom has another sliding door with the shower and the sink and the toilet all closed off from that. The shower was like really big. It was like strangely large for the otherwise. It's meant to be, feel a little cramped, compact, kind of cabin feels basically in there. But the shower was giant, so that was kind of fun.
Interesting.
And they have the same H2O flavored bath products as everywhere else.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of charging ports we noticed in all of the hotels, really, which is good. But a lot of them are USB. Like, there's more USBs than full charge ports. So bring a cable that has a USB port in it. My phone does USB-C, and the cable that came with it is USB-C to USB-C. So I don't have one that's got a USB-A on the other end, and that would have been a little helpful. But it turned out fine. There was plenty of ports down by the queen bed, but I also had a 10-foot cord in order to be able to have my phone in the bunk bed with me. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to have a charge up there at all.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Yeah. So we just went to bed, and we woke up the next morning, and D3 had another little good morning message for us to say, enjoy your trip to Batu this day, because we were going to take a shuttle from the Starcuiser after breakfast to go to Galaxy's Edge, which everybody just calls Batu.
When was the last time you visited a Disney park? For many adults, it's been a really long time. I would love to help you fix that situation. As a travel agent specializing in Disney, my job is to make sure your vacation can go as seamless as possible. All of my services are complimentary to my clients. Yes, you heard that right. I'm free to you. These services include helping you from the start finding the perfect resort to fit your needs, handling all the bookings and reservations, helping to teach you about the parks, because if it's been a while, man, have they changed. I have insider tips and tricks I share with all of my clients, and I will be your single point of contact throughout your entire trip, even while you are there. Don't wait another year to visit a Disney park or go on a Disney cruise. Let this be the year you finally go. Email me at jenny@trolleylanetravel.com to get the conversation started, or see the link in the show notes to fill out my quote form. All listeners that book a trip with me will receive a $20 gift card to use on their trip. Just make sure you say you heard this on the podcast. Okay, now back to the show. Hey, this is Jenny, and I just wanted to pop on real quick and let you know that Ellie is going to be joining us on this portion of the interview. When we did our first recording, we didn't realize how long their trip tale was going to take because they had such a long, amazing vacation and there was so much information we wanted to get through that she had to actually leave and go back to work. So we ended up rescheduling and recording on a different day. And so in this portion of the Starcuiser interview, you will hear both Sarah and Ellie. Enjoy.
I guess just a little maybe recap-ish for Mom about day one. Did you have any specific things that you wanted to bring up about day one, Mom? I kind of gave a broad overview. I talked about the elevator kid. But what was your general feelings after day one?
Okay, well, that was kind of the main thing for me on day one. I mean, checking in and just seeing the overall grandiosity of the ship was really cool. I feel a little bit conflicted because I'm sorry that people aren't going to get to go there anymore, I guess. So this is kind of just a historical record of what it was like. But yeah, no, I think we could hop right on into day two. Really, the first thing right away, first thing in the morning, is the shuttle to Batu, or what is it's not really called Star Wars Land, but
Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, Galaxy's Edge.
We totally call it Star Wars Land unashamedly.
Most people do.
Yeah, it's kind of like calling Spaceship Earth the Epcot Ball. It's technically you're wrong, but people do it.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so we had a breakfast before our scheduled shuttle time, and we did have on our data pad an actual scheduled time we were supposed to report to the shuttle. However, we found after breakfast it did not matter. You really could board whenever you wanted. But I think that they just had that there to say hey, around this time you should be thinking about leaving, or maybe it was some sort of ploy to not have so many people come at once, but there weren't that many people there, and so I don't think that was really an issue. Possibly if it was busier, they might not have let you board unless your data pad said you could, but that wasn't our experience. But breakfast was, again, full of funny foods that didn't have real titles, but that you could kind of suss out what they were made of. There was a waffle and some bacon, but they weren't called waffle and bacon, and so you just knew. And obviously you can see with your eyes what you're looking at, and the breakfast foods I found were less confusing than all of the other foods at different times, so that was really good because it's so important, to start off with that good breakfast when you're getting ready for a potentially really long park day, especially.
As we mentioned before, I am a big fan of having a breakfast plan, especially. So the whole Starcruiser voyage actually was really good for that because there just was always food available, 24/7.
That's really nice, and it's kind of nice, especially because you're trapped there. So, not trapped, but you can't leave and get food on your own, so there has to be food available.
Yeah, they didn't have any problem. They didn't try to check our bags that we were bringing to our room or anything. So had we wanted to bring our own food, we probably couldn't have it delivered there like you could to a regular resort, but you could pack it in with you and nobody was going to tell you couldn't. So
but you did. I mean, we had protein bars.
We had trick-or-treat candy.
The trick-or-treat candy, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We did still have our gallons of flavored water that we had purchased before, and that was no problem. They also had a soda machine, and there was free water there that you could go and fill up your water bottle anytime you liked, and regular stuff like that. I was also just going to mention that before we left the room, D3, the in-room droid, had more just stuff to say. She's like, I hope you enjoy your trip on Batu, and let's really work on getting our friend SK untrapped, because at the show the night before, they had trapped this droid called SK, but it looks very much like R2. And he had some sort of resistance information that the First Order was trying to get out of him, and they put this bar on the droid to prevent the droid from going anywhere and to tap into the droid's information. And so D3's mission for us, and part of the resistance mission for us, was to collect parts on Batu that we could bring back to the Starcuiser to free said droid.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, kind of convoluted storyline there for not experiencing it, but I think that was a pretty quick synopsis of it. And so you know how the data pad works when you're in Batu and Galaxy's Edge, where you scan things with your phone and it'll add something to your inventory. That system worked the exact same. All the games about like hacking and drawing the puzzles, fixing all the puzzles to hack and tune and all those things worked exactly the same as they would if you weren't on the Starcuiser. You just had more options for them by the time you got there on the shuttle. And the shuttle, I think, was a legitimate bus. And they had totally decked it out inside so that it matched the feeling of kind of both the pre-ride of Rise and also the Starcuiser. Those things felt pretty similar. And also on our data pad, we had reserved at any time we could have gone and done Rise and Smuggler's Run. So we basically got an included lightning lane for those that we knew we were going to do. And with this day, we also had a reservation for droid making and for Oga's Cantina. And those two were about midday, so we decided we were going to do the rides first after we got on the shuttle. And we got on the shuttle at about, I think, 8:45, and our time was even listed at like 9:15 or 9:30. So it was quite a bit early that we boarded that shuttle, and they had no problems. And then you get there, and you can see where we would come out when you're just normally in Galaxy's Edge. It's totally something you can walk by and look into, and they won't let you in there if you're not on the Starcuiser, but it's not like a secret hidden cast member entrance or anything. It's properly built into Galaxy's Edge there.
They give you a pin if you're coming off of the Starcuiser, so that I guess, so that you could be identified. You also have the special wristbands, if you talked about that already. But yeah, it's kind of an entrance in Galaxy's Edge that you don't know what's back there. Yeah. And then it turns out it's really for this transport back and forth of the passengers.
That's cool.
I think on the map, that section of Galaxy's Edge is called Docking Bay 9. Which is different, obviously, than Docking Bay 7, where the food is. But I think that's what that area is called. It's very in the back. There's, I think it's by where the blue and green milk stand is. So just like right across the kind of walkway from that milk stand.
And it's by the First Order store too.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Their main store right there. That's like directly next to it. I remember Mom and I were walking around shopping at some point, I think maybe now or later in the trip, and we went back there just because we'd never been back there and didn't really look into that store, and we took like one peek inside and we were like, we don't want this store. Not First Order. I do think it would be really fun to play the opposite side now that we've played this side, you know, just to see what other things you get to experience from being anti. But it's so anti to our personalities to try to do anything mean or conniving like that. So we just, didn't do any of that. But yeah, so while we were on the transport, or possibly even in the morning before we took the transport, we got more comms on the data pad from all the people who wanted missions for us. Like I mentioned, D3 said a mission, but it never showed up in the comms, so it wasn't like really something you had to do. But one of our other comms from the cruise director was kind of talking about the same thing, like go pick up this key to get the resistor bar off of SK so that we can save him later. And then Mom also got a special mission from the captain of the ship because she'd been doing some more resistance things the night before. And I had a special mission from Gaia's manager, who his name's Wraith, and he was like the scavenger side. I think that's what the purple is called. So I like to do the purple stuff. I always think it's fun because you get a little bit of everything, I think, when you do that. And so there was just more games, basically, that you had to play. Like I mentioned, when you got to Galaxy's Edge, right the second that we exited that entrance area from the shuttle, it was like, tune this, hack this, do this. And so we were on our phones quite a bit for the first couple minutes when we first got in there to finish up all those comms. And then a couple of the comms were like, go ride Rise, go ride Smuggler's Run. And when you're done with those missions, they call the rides the missions, then, you know, the thing would update. And you could say, yeah, I collected the coaxium, I, you know, helped save Ray, or whatever your concept was there for your mission. And then there was a few more things to scan by Oga's as well. And I'm not sure if some of the missions that we had for Oga were specific to the fact that we had chosen to get an Oga's reservation, because that was not required or included as part of the Starcruiser. We just decided to do that. We also had one that was near the droid depot, which again, I'm not sure if we would have had that if we didn't have the droid reservation. So some, you know, kind of alternate storylines that you could also get in there for that. But I think we did Rise first, which turned out to be really good, because then later in the day, at like 3 after we got back on the ship, we actually got a message on the comms from the main announcements, not from an individual person, that said, like, resistance activity in Batu has been temporarily suspended, and we'll let you know if we hear that resistance activity has resumed, which we took to understand that Rise was down.
Yep, it's a fancy way.
It was so fancy for them to say, like, you can't go on Rise right now, sorry. Right. But by then we were done, so it wasn't a problem. But it was good because, again, same as you would in a normal park day, everybody else that's not on the Starcruiser is still there doing their normal park day, and that ride goes down somewhat often. So it was cool they had a built-in way to let you do that. I kind of wonder a little bit if Rise was down for the whole time you were there and you had those missions, what would happen if there was some way that at the end of the day or something you could just auto-complete it, because you didn't ever see anything. Sometimes in the regular Galaxy's Edge missions, you can say that you're at a place when you're not really at a place and do the activity anyway. Basically, either because like your GPS didn't understand where you were or something like that. They kind of have a fail-safe built in. I never saw anything like that for any of the Starcruiser missions. And I actually did forget to mention on the first day, I was already really struggling with the comms coming in. Mom would get them pretty quickly. And there was a big delay with data versus Wi-Fi. They had us connect to the ship Wi-Fi, but it only worked in the atrium. And then in our room, my data would work and the Wi-Fi wouldn't work at all. And so that was kind of a bit of a struggle for me, although Mom didn't seem to be having that problem. So we weren't really ever sure why, but Mom would get a mission and we would go do it. And then an hour or 2 later, I would get the same mission and we'd have to go do it again.
Oh, that's a big delay.
It's a little bit, it wasn't like 5 seconds or like a minute. It was like at least half an hour sometimes. And it was just weird. I'm not sure why they chose to do it that way, or if it was just my phone having signal issues, because it is a big concrete building with, in theory, no windows, so the signal would be a little difficult. But I'd hope that the Wi-Fi would be better because of that, and it kind of wasn't. And I generally feel like hotel Wi-Fi isn't that great either, so that's not that abnormal, but for something that relies so heavily on that, it seems like some better thing could be figured out. But in Batu, it was working better because I could have just regular phone data going to the regular outside world. But there was still a couple, like one mission, I think, that Mom got before me, or she completed it and my phone crashed doing it, and so I had to restart from the beginning. So it tended to make us run around a little bit more because of that. It wasn't super, super streamlined sometimes. But yeah, we went on Rise, and Rise went fine this time. Instead of making us sit on the transport shuttle part for 25 minutes, like the first time we tried. And then we got off of that and went straight to Smuggler's Run, which was super fun because Hondo, when he's got the little, like, welcome to the ride, have fun, or whatever he's saying in there, he says, like, welcome new crew members and Halcyon Starcruiser passengers. Like, he knew that we were on there, and I wondered if it was because of our magic band or something like that. We weren't ever really sure how they knew to play us that message. But Mom thought that they should have more of those things. It was really the only one that we encountered all that special because of being a Star Cruiser, but it was like a whole different little message, you know, just one half a line that got added, but it still felt cool. Oh, but then at the end of the ride, when we did collect the coaxium, we actually got 2 coaxium. We did really well for some reason at that time. He did say, like, I'll have this sent to the Star Cruiser later in the ride itself too.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Like, they played us a whole different version of the ride because we were on it, which, you know, who knows if the people who were with us, since we were just 2, we had 4 strangers in the ride, a family with us. Who knows if they knew the difference or not?
Right.
Like, ask them or really interact with them about it. But that would be so cool if you were just a regular rider and you happened to get a Star Cruiser passenger on your, you know, ship mission. You'd still get to see that fun thing just because one Star Cruiser passenger is on it. So you could keep your eyes out for that for the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I know. It's like coming down to the end.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so then I think after that, it was about time for us to do the droid, or we were running around doing more missions. I didn't write down every time we were running around missions, because every downtime we were doing that. Originally, when we were planning it, we thought maybe we'd hop over to Tower of Terror or something else during this period of time. And after the first day, we were like, absolutely not. We have no time because we're going to be doing all these missions. And it just takes, it's fun. It's great. It's so interactive, but it takes a lot longer than you think it's going to do them all and travel to the place and all of that. So then we went to go build droid.
With your departure time and with your droid reservation and your Oga's reservation and going on the 2 rides, and then you have to be leaving back for the ship around 3 or so. Yeah, there's really no time to go explore the rest of the park. So you really are just there in Batu for a few hours.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I always wondered about that because one of the big complaints about the Star Cruiser was you don't really get to go to the parks. And then people were like, but you get to go to Hollywood Studios. And I kept thinking, but do you really go to Hollywood Studios or do you go to Galaxy's Edge? So this has been so interesting. Like, I didn't even know about all the missions. I knew there were some missions. But it's also sad to me that because it's ending, like, we'll never know like everyone's different experiences or stories because it's just was such a short amount of time it was out there.
Yeah, I did screenshot every single column and every single mission on the day that we left. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do with those images. I thought about I'd put them on a blog if I had a blog, but I don't have a blog, so it'd be weird to make one just to upload these images of my one storyline, you know. But yeah, it's so hard, and it's so, you know, it's 2 days worth of interactions basically that you'd have to collect. So if a reporter ever asks me,
you're like, I'm ready.
Send them my one experience. But yeah, it's crazy how many there are, and it's not like an overwhelming amount, but it's definitely enough to occupy your time, you know. To the Droid Depot, which I had been looking forward to for so long. I was so excited, and we both got BB-8 or BB unit, sorry. And I also got the droid backpack to put it in, which I didn't realize ahead of time, but it actually has this foam kind of container in it so that the droid can't move around too much in there. It's not like you're just putting it in a loose backpack. It's got this formation. And so now I display it in my house with just the foam piece. So I could still use the backpack for anything else. That foam piece comes out of the backpack, but it's cool that you could use both. And I made a purple and white and black droid combination, and I picked the purple voice card for it, which the guy who was helping us out said was the sassy one, which felt appropriate. And then I think Mom got, what did you get? The orange one or the yellow one? And
I think it's orange. And I mean, I don't know how much stock to put in, their description of what these voice packs do. But the guy that was working there, the cast member who was helping us with the droid assembly was, super friendly and very descriptive. And the voices really do sound quite different between our two droids. So that's fun.
Yeah, I think Mom's like a little higher pitched and mine's just a little like neutral pitched. And they do have, it's not even like the notes that they're playing are the same. Like they're fully different kind of parts of songs, honestly, for lack of a better word, in addition to the different tone of voice. So that was cute. There were some parts of putting the droid together that weren't easy, which I had read. It was a bit of a struggle sometimes to get them together. We did have cast members at the actual assembly station that were more than willing to basically just do it for us, because at some point I think they were just, like, come in, do the thing, and get out a little bit at that station particularly. So that wasn't too involved. But then you have the activation session, and we have a little video of it lighting up and speaking to us for the first time, and that was really cute. And then we went outside to go and start playing with it. And when we both took them out and started using the controls,
they had a little test area.
Yeah, just a little it was maybe rubber pad or something. It's right outside the area. But we started using the remote control, and neither of us had any idea.
We can't do it.
We still have a struggle. It's chaos. I think that the R2 or the R units and the C units or whatever the other one's called now are much more straightforward because the head doesn't move, and so you can at least understand that where the head is where it's going. But the BB units, the head moves on the body and you have to orient it to wherever the eye of the head is, but it's so moving and rocking and going everywhere. It's very confusing.
It's a ball on top of a ball, and you're supposed to use a remote control to move it around. It's the cutest looking, but it is probably the least functional. If I did it again, I would do a different kind that I could actually drive.
Yeah, agreed. But it was kind of like a little sad for a second when we both took them out and did that for the first couple times. We both lost the heads off of our droids because they're only attached via like a magnet. And Mom's went like running away somewhere, and I went to go pick it up. And when I went to go bend down to pick hers up, my head fell off of my droid, and it ended up skittering even further away, and it got a scratch on the camera lens. Man. And I had this thing for like 2 minutes, and I couldn't. But by then, the same cast member who had been helping us out at the checkout and telling us about all the descriptions and things had rotated, and he was the one manning this practice with your droid spot now. And I was like, man, what the heck? Come on. I was just trying to help. When he was like, give me a minute. I'll take it inside and we'll get you a new one. And so he did. He took my old head inside, and then a few minutes later, they came out and gave me a new one. And
That's
it was
awesome.
so nice. And I was so like embarrassed and awkward, and then I didn't even want to try to play with it. I just wanted to hide it in the bag. But yeah, it was another piece of little kind of pixie dust magic for us that they were willing to go and replace that, even though technically it already left the shop and everything like that. So,
yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah, it really was. And then after that, we went to do some more missions while we waited for Oga's. I think our droid was at 10:45 and Oga's was at like 11:45 because we weren't sure how long the droid making was going to take when we first did it. It took 15, 20 minutes, and half of that was us trying to make up our mind about the color of droid we were getting. So, but then we tried to check into Oga's early, which is fine.
It was like 15 minutes early.
They'll only let you check in 15 minutes early. We heard somebody come in earlier and they couldn't even get checked in because it was more than 15 minutes before their reservation time. And then we still ended up waiting for another 30 minutes from check-in, which was actually 20 minutes past our reservation time before we even got in there. Which was definitely the longest, quote-unquote, worst kind of line reservation waiting that we had to do the entire trip.
They don't have a good waiting area there. There's nowhere to sit, and it's kind of out in the sun. And people were super grumpy in line. So, like, a lot of people were saying that it was 20, 30 minutes past their reservation time, and kind of some frustration there, which I felt a little bit because I was like, well, 20 minutes past your reservation time under normal circumstances in the real world is kind of a long time. But honestly, by the time you get in and start experiencing it, you don't even mind because it's so flippin' cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we did have a secret mission to ask about in Oga's, and this one was actually kind of a fun one where the comm for the mission said, go in there and ask your host or your bartender that Oga has some information for you and you're there to collect it or whatever. And then they we did that, we got in and we had a standing room spot at the bar, and so we were dealing with the bartender directly. And we said that. She was like, what can I get for you? Or like, do you need some time to look at the menu? And we're like, actually, first, we have a mission. We were super not spy about it. We were going to maybe try to be like, slide. And we were like, no, we can't forget. And so then she gives you a special coaster, like a regular bar coaster, kind of cardboard papery material with another scan code like the ones you had seen around Galaxy's Edge, where it's a QR code in that elongated hexagon shape. And it added some material to our data pads list of things that we've collected that everybody was excited about later for the comms. Again, everything has strange names and random things that don't really mean anything in a regular context, but it was cool to get handed this secret coaster. And I still have the coaster. I could take it with me, so that was fun. And then I got a Jedi Mind Trick, and Mom got the Bepsin Fizz drinks, both of which were very good. And then after that, I had seen somebody else getting a Hyperdrive Punch-It, which is a non-alcoholic one. And that was actually my favorite one. It was Blue Powerade is my favorite drink for some reason. And the Hyperdrive Punch-It has Blue Powerade in it. And so I was really excited about that. And then we had one more mission after that to just go and scan some things or tune some things. And then we went back to the Starcuiser because our next event was at 3:15. So I think we went back to the Starcuiser about 2 and took our afternoon break due to having been in the park basically all morning, same as we normally would. And while we were there on our break, we were thinking about our next day, which was going to be a regular park day for us after deboarding the Starcuiser. And we decided to switch our reservation for the parks, which we had done several times over by this point, to Animal Kingdom, because we were only going to be there for a little bit, and I still think it was the park we spent the least amount of time in, not because we didn't want to, just because we didn't schedule to. And we'd already done quite a bit of Magic Kingdom, which was our original park reservation for that. And so then we went to the atrium to do the next missions that were up for us, and they were missions that were in our data pad, or in my data pad. I had one from Wraith to meet there and do this heist to steal something, which I love heists. Heist movies are my favorite. And nothing really happened. All of the people, all of the cast characters were there in the atrium doing things, talking to people, meandering around, but no real events or anything happened. And this particular mission was like, stick a cocktail napkin in your M band so that I know that you're on my team to do these things for the heist. It's very heisty. I was very excited. And it did not matter. Nothing, like, that made no difference at all whatsoever. So that one mission, for some reason, just kind of seemed to fall a bit flat. But Mom had a couple things that I think came up during that same time that were more interesting. So we just ended up following some characters around during that period of time. And then we tried to play this, like, do you know the person that you're with game where they just ask you some questions. And we were expecting it to be like a normal game for some reason. It was not. It was like, who is most likely to ride this Star Wars creature fastest? It's like, I was not expecting this. I should have, of course, but I just didn't. I thought it would just be typical. And so we did not win that game because I think that you had to basically get 100% right in order to have won, because there was only like 6 questions or something. And I think we didn't match on one of the questions. And that was all. And there was still other things happening with the characters while we were playing that game even. So you really could have picked to do anything you wanted that afternoon. I do think that some of the interactions that afternoon were a bit light because they knew a lot of people were in the park still trying to ride the rides again or something like that. So I think
and I'll say there too that, I think that there was a last scheduled shuttle to come back from Batu at 3 or 4, I don't remember exactly, and they seemed to I think they were respecting that people were coming back around this hour and would want some rest, because even though they had some stuff that you could meet these characters in the atrium right around that time, it was also very quiet around there. I think a lot of people did stay out as long as they could, might have gone in later too. And then at one point after the characters kind of left the atrium, the cruise director came on, or a shipwide announcement came on and said, this would be a good time for a nap, or this would be a good time for a rest, or something. It's a good time to rest up before dinner, I think is what they said. So I think there was kind of this 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Built-in downtime, which I think was really smart because, we wanted that, and people with young kids would want that. And so while there wasn't a whole lot going on, I think that was fine. And one of the things that I appreciated a little bit about the whole Starcruiser experience in general is that you could be busy all of the time, but there also is plenty of appropriate time to have a little bit of downtime and not feel like you're missing out on anything. So that's what kind of was going on that afternoon until it got to be dinner time.
Yeah, that's really nice too that they allow that. So I do have a question. When you're on the Starcruiser, are you allowed to just roam around freely?
Entirely,
Yep.
yeah. So there's like a little lounge cocktail bar area, and then there's the cafeteria. The cafeteria does have some hours it was closed, but none of them seemed like that intrusive. I think it was just like pre-dinner, basically, so they could set up for all the dinner things. But otherwise, it was, I think, 3 floors of like cabins, and on one of those floors of cabins was also the dining room area. And then there was the atrium, which had the cocktail bar attached, and then there was kind of a basement-y area where a lot of the mission things were. There's the engineering room and this cargo hold, which Mom was able to access upon returning from Batu that day. I had talked about how you tried to access that all day on the first day, and finally we're able to on the second day.
Yeah, they gave you these little tidbits, you can see that you want this other access. You can see that there's other stuff that you want and you really don't know how to get it. So that definitely stuck with me through that whole day on Batu. It's still, on my list of things that I want to do, and completing these missions on Batu allowed us that access when we returned. So that was fun.
Yeah. And during that time, we were in the atrium, just milling around, trying to accomplish this mission I had where nothing was really happening. Sandro actually came and found us again and said that, like, the night before, he had said something to his girlfriend, who wasn't his girlfriend yet, that made her upset. And he, she was trying to tell him a story, and he, wasn't listening to her story or something, and being, a bad potential boyfriend. And so he came to us and said that he wanted to write her an apology song and asked us to help him write it.
That's funny.
And so that was probably the number one most interactive thing in the whole, personally interactive, from a cast member to us. We literally sat there. There was maybe 5 other people who sat there with us, and, the 7 or 8 of us just wrote this random song. It's so silly. I think I have a little video clip of the song somewhere, but I think that is a truly unique to us experience, because he would not have written the same song if other people had suggested other, lines and things, and a testament to his musicianness to be able to just come up with something based on what all these strangers say should be in a song.
Yeah, that's fun.
So that was cool. And then we had to act a little secretive, because she came out and was potentially going to hear what we were doing recording in the corner or whatever. And then he ended up playing it for her, and she said that she forgave him. It was really cute.
That's fun. I love it.
Yeah. Again, I think that the AI people who were maybe telling the cast members who to go and hang out with, probably told them to go and collect us for this particular event. Mm-hmm. And so we got that little bit of a unique experience. And then, I think we went to dinner, basically, and dinner was again at the same time it was the day before, which I believe is 5:30 or so. And they do want you to arrive pretty promptly for that, because especially the second dinner was another 3-course situation and stuff. They all were, I guess, or both of them were.
Well, the second dinner was very much everybody in the dining room was getting served their courses at the same time, which is really kind of an amazing feat.
It really is.
Yeah. So, they would dim the lights and announce what the course was, and then the kitchen doors would open, and this whole line of staff comes out, all carrying the same plates and delivering them all to the same table. So everybody's really eating and experiencing the same food at the same time. It was really quite impressive.
If the servers had been dancing, it would have felt exactly like the Be Our Guest situation in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
It felt just like that. So it was cool. And the chefs were the ones who announced each new meal. There's 3 total courses, right? And then maybe even dessert after that. And so 3 or 4 of the actual head chefs back there, pastry chefs, came out to do the announcement, which was, that's always fun, to see the people actually making what you're about to eat. And some of them mentioned that they had personally invented whatever it was that we were eating at the time. It was another thing where we could kind of eat some parts and not eat other parts because of that. But at some point there was some more vegetables, and so Mom was happy about that. I'm pretty sure there was another short rib situation involved here because everything was a short rib. And there was also a chicken and a fish option at some point that we ended up getting some vegetable egg rolls instead of the fish option. That one was really cool because it came out with a smoking, bubbly potion-like mixture, like a fun cocktail drink would have. And the people who actually got the fish version had that in their glass that was holding the fish, but because we had this alternate, we got a special kind of beaker glass that still smoked and had the same effect as everyone else's, but because we didn't have the fish, it was plated slightly differently, so it was cool to see them try to keep the same aesthetic by still changing for the dietary restrictions.
Yeah, that's really
fun.
nice.
Yeah. And then I also got a Hoth icebreaker drink at this dinner, which is another alcoholic beverage that they say is what people in Chandrila order when they want to start conversations with somebody new. And so it's called icebreaker because of literally being an icebreaker. And he was trying to explain it to me in his Earth but not Earth terms, wherever he was supposed to be from. He was like, I've heard in other places they do these activities called an icebreaker. And I was like, yes, okay, you no longer need to explain your whole story. But he went on to give me a little bit about the drink, which was pretty cool and unique that he was able to. And that was not something that was on the drink menu. Even though you didn't have a food menu, you did have a cocktail drink menu each night. But I had seen online that is a drink that you can order at the cocktail lounge upstairs. And so you could still get that in the dining hall, even though it was not listed there, basically. Which I think is similar to a cruise. Like if you ask for something at dinner and it's somewhere else on the ship, that they'll go get it and bring it to you.
Yeah.
However, they do that mystery. So that was cool. And then there was another little bit of a show during dinner. It wasn't the same as the first night where there was the singing happening the whole time, because you really experienced the lights of the dining room changed for each meal. Like everything was an experience for each course during this dinner. But towards the end, they had the first order people come out, which we had gotten a comm in the middle of dinner. It kind of, I don't know, it's not spoiled, but kind of spoiled it for us, where it said the first order was taking over the ship, and it was now under first order command instead of whatever neutral command we had been under before. And they came and unveiled some first order flags over pretty things in the dining hall, ruined the whole decor with their first order mess. And then, there was some protesting, and our server was so funny the whole time. Every time he came to check on us or give us a new course, he was like, what is going on? Like they were acting as well. They weren't just serving. And so that was crazy and cool to see him interact. And he interacted similar to us, where we're like, why? What's going on? Like he clearly had no allegiances or ties or anything, but he still recognized something was happening and responded to us in a way that made sense. So that was fun. And after dinner, we had an appointment in the bridge again, which was basically to give us a reason to implement the bridge training we had received on the first day. But it was really cool. And this time, instead of rotating through all 4 stations, we got to pick our one station that we were at. And the point was to try to get the ship out of some ring of first order ships that had surrounded it, because we were, now under first order command after dinner. And Mom and I have some pictures from doing the Shields game this time, which was basically like, I was thinking a little bit since we last recorded about which games were like other real world games. And the Shield game was like one of those brick breaker games where you have the bar across the bottom and you bounce the ball off to go and break something at the top. That's the closest motion to what this particular video game was like. And Mom and I knew that we had kicked butt at it the first time, and so I was like, I want to do that one again. I want to use the little knobs, and we had really good teamwork about that one. And this time, instead of being against the Starcruiser's score, you just got to see your own score. And I don't really know what that score was out of, because it was not the same numbers as the first round. But we have a picture of our table, and everybody else got around 160, 180, and we were at 225. Like, we were so good at that game. So that was fun, and then we ended up escaping that thing. But then there was a little bit of a gap here to go and have another appointment in the engineering room, and that was also with the cruise director. The cruise director had been with us in the bridge for a little bit, I really don't know how they do it. Like, I know that they can just send someone there, but if other people have appointments in the bridge, they have to have a cruise director with them. Like, we didn't have the entire ship with us in the bridge during that time. We had maybe 40 people. So they've got some crazy scheduling going on with how they get everybody where they need to be in order to do the events to have the story. So we met her in the bridge, and then we had to meet her later in the engineering room, where we played more of the engineering room games, and we had specialized in that one engineering game that I mentioned before. And so again, we tried to like stand nearest that game so that when they assigned us games, we got the one we already knew about.
Smart move.
Yeah. And the other people that got partnered with us on that game did not know about the game, but they were trying to run it like they knew about the game, and we were like, actually, no. It's not.
No, they did a good job. They were a good team.
They were. I still think you and I ended up manning like 3 of those stations instead of the 1 per person that it could have been, but it's fine. We're also just fast at games. We like those puzzles and things. Our brain just works and just does it really quick. And then in the middle of that, the point of that was to like get all of the ship back off of the First Order's command. Like, we had to redo the engineering things, undo the First Order's ones, and then do it for our purposes, for the Resistance purposes, because the cruise director was very clearly Resistance-y. And then in the middle of that session, everything went red. And guess what? We had to go report to our muster stations, which I knew about by then. I had mentioned, Mom, that I was like, what on earth is a muster station? And I was confused about it for so long. But now it was like, aha, I understand. There's an emergency, so we have to go report. But the red light, which I also mentioned, meant that it was part of the show, not a real emergency or anything. If it was a white light, that would have been the real emergency instead. So we went to the atrium and reported to the general quadrant of the atrium where our muster station was. And there was this crazy show. Mom, do you want to talk about the show?
Sure, yeah. Well, so that's when the First Order lieutenant, right? The First Order lieutenant showed back up and was like, nope, we're still here. You're not getting free of us. And then all of a sudden, who came first? I guess it must have been Ray. Yeah, Ray showed up, which, you know, some people, I guess, had seen her. Maybe we even saw her earlier on the ship with Chewie. But so then Ray was there, and she was like, no, you can't take us. And then Kylo Ren showed up, and then Rey and Kylo Ren had this epic battle up here, you know, it's up on the higher level of the atrium so that everybody could see. And it was an all-out final battle. It's your final night on the Starcuiser, and so they really went all out and did a lightsaber battle. And even to the point of like damaging some elements of the ship, made it look like the big light in the atrium got destroyed in this battle, and it kind of fell down and was hanging there by a few cords, you know, all very elaborate and very dramatic and fun. And that's that kind of lightsaber battle that you would expect to see if you were watching a Star Wars movie of some kind, and brought to life right in front of us. So it was very much like a grand finale experience of the whole voyage. Of course, Rey won. Kylo Ren went somewhere. The droid SK was freed as you wanted SK to be. And as far as I understand it, everybody lived happily ever after.
Except for Kylo Ren, who went on to being the moody person that he always is.
Wherever.
Yeah. But yeah, SK went with Rey to go. There was like a whole kind of sad goodbye where the cruise director and the captain were like, no, SK, don't go, but we understand you have a higher calling in the Resistance. And so SK ended up leaving with Chewie and Rey. And so now the ship was one less droid on the ship. But that was really cool. And then sort of at the end of that the cruise director and captain had some more like, thanks for joining us on this crazy journey. We really appreciate you guys being here. And during this time, and even when the lieutenant came out as well, not everybody, but there were some select people that they decided to call out as special thanks. So the cruise director and the captain had special people that they thanked. The lieutenant, when he first came out, he was like, thanks to these people, I have the information I need to take you over, or whatever. And then at the end, when they were, when Gaia and Wraith, I think, were saying goodbye, also Sandro and his now girlfriend were there to say goodbye. And Sandro mentioned us as some of the select people that he was so grateful for
That's so
having
cool.
a special trip. Yeah. So it was really cute to have been. We weren't expecting it at all. He was just like, oh, and Sarah and Ellie, thank you so much. And we were like, what? That's us. So again, we think that they probably had somebody whispering names in their ear, but it was really cute to be included in that way.
That's fun.
Yeah, and then we went to a little dessert party where we had way too many tiny desserts to try. And Sandro and I think her name's Awani. I just really don't know. Awani.
Owani. Yeah, it's like, you can look it up, but it's like Ouwani.
Yeah, I think it's like
and
two
it's just kind of
O's.
pronounced one.
Yeah. They played a little show at the dessert party as well that we were there for. And so we saw them again, and they waved hi to us again and recognized us again, which was always crazy and funny. And then when we had come back from Batu, the D3 droid had been taken over by the First Order kind of before dinner even, which was maybe part of the reason we quote-unquote spoiled that for ourselves. But then we came back to the room after the dessert party, pretty much by 10. Like I said, the first night, everything had quieted down. Everything was just clearly go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But D3 had come back from being overcome by the First Order and kind of said goodbye. And then we didn't really hear anything else from her, even though we tried to check in a couple more times in the next morning and stuff. But yeah, then we packed up a bit to get ready to go and went to bed for the end of Starcruiser Day 2.
That sounds so fun. Like, it's just so, when you haven't done it and you've only seen pictures and heard like little stories, like it was so fascinating just hearing how it all intertwines and how all the inner workings of it. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very fascinating. And I mean, even, we're not the world's hugest Star Wars fan, because we're certainly anti, but we're not super in depth with our fandom there. And you just don't need to be, really. I mean, it's awesome if you are, but it's awesome if you're not. I just can't really put into words how sort of just amazing and impressive it is. The cast members, I mean, they're living and acting, they're living a play for these 2.5 days, and they never break character, and it's kind of just amazing. It's super over the top and impressive, but it doesn't feel over the top. It just feels like a genuine experience. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I am really sorry that it's going away. I have to think, some of it has to do with the word not getting out. I mean, we barely happened to stumble across it when we were booking this trip. We had the whole rest of our trip planned when all of a sudden Sarah found out about this, and we kind of decided to fit it in. But I would recommend it to anybody. Just what an experience. You just can't have an experience like that very many other places or times in your life. It was truly amazing.
Yeah.
They did say, I think I recently heard that they got a permit to work on it. So maybe they're going to change it a little bit and open it back up. I think the biggest problem they had, though, is it was kind of like a one and done. So people who did it, it's not like they were going to come back and do it.
Yeah, it's hard to say because there's so many different storylines you could have gotten. Like, I'm still interested in what all those storylines could have been. And so if there was a better way to, like, after you're done, see what you could have done, I maybe would feel that way. You know, there's always the chance that you'll try to get the same things again. Like, if the people who are assigning you stuff just happen to assign you that, you know, you don't have any way to say, like, oh, I already know who Sandro is or anything like that. So some of that is, you know, a little bit hard. And obviously the core and the people and the games are the same. And so there's some of that. But I think we still could have done more lightsaber training if we had done more of a Saja route. And so I think and who knows what the First Order people had to do because they weren't doing bridge training and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's hard to know some of those particulars, I think.
You obviously could repeat to try to, you know, experience different storylines, but frankly, I would not pay that money to go and just try to repeat or try to get a different storyline. It is very expensive. I didn't like that you're in a room with no window, really. I get it. I totally get the vibe and I understand, and it was fine. But I could see how that would be off-putting. It was a little off-putting, and I could see how it would be even more off-putting for some other people. So I could see that even though there are other experiences that certainly can be had, that I don't think, for me, at my financial level, that it would be worth paying so much just to try some different storylines out. I probably would not.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing, was the cost, especially because the rooms fit 4 people. Well, there's a lot of family of 5. So then you'd have to get 2 rooms. And that just would be below the budget. Because there were like a couple of suites, but there weren't even that many. No. And those were usually always booked. And so, yeah.
I definitely think it'd be interesting if they had some sort of like Starcruiser experience, but don't stay on the Starcruiser. That was maybe half the cost. So you could report in every day at 0900 or whatever, and to do your missions and have the other storyline, but then you could go back to your regular other, you know, resort hotel. It could be interesting. I don't know, just ideas.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
Definitely, yeah. But then, the third technical day of being on there, I suppose, we just woke up, went for another breakfast. It was the same breakfast as the day before. Nothing new or different really there. No new missions or comms or anything this morning. No real goodbyes. The night before, we had gotten some kind of wrap-up comms that were like, thanks for helping us with all these missions. And I think that is the point where definitely Mom and I were caught up. We kind of got all those goodbye comms at the same time. So any delays I'd been having, or that one mission I tried to do at 3:15 that never really did anything, it wrapped up properly at the end like that. So by the end, you do get the conclusion of all those things. But then we had to go back out basically the same way that we came in. We left our luggage outside the door, and we took the elevator that we had entered on and exited out the same metal security detectors that we had come into it via. Got the valet to bring us our car. Somebody ran up to our room to go get our luggage and brought it back down for us. And then we drove off to go to the Grand Floridian.
Thank you for listening today. I really appreciate you spending your time over here with us, and I hope this was just what you needed to hear today. I'm always looking for new guests for the podcast, so if you are traveling to any Disney park or cruise, see the show notes for more information about being on the show. Visit the show all around the web at DisneyTravelTales.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Disney Travel Tales. See pictures from the guests on their vacations. Plus, this is just a great way to stay up to date with all things related to the podcast and Disney travel in general. Join me next week with a brand new episode. So until then, this is Jenny, and may all your Disney travel dreams become a reality. Hi, this is Jenny, just popping on with some exciting news. I've started a Facebook group just for you. I'm really excited about this because not only will this be a great opportunity to get to know each other, but this is also a safe space to talk all things Disney. Members can share travel tips, resort tips, likes and dislikes, and the best part is this will give you an opportunity to talk to the guest on the show and ask them questions about their trips. I was trying to think of a fun name for us, and Disney Travel Tales Podcast Clubhouse came to mind. This is a private group, and of course, I will not allow anyone to be bullied or talked down to. I just want this space to be positive and fun. Check the show notes for a link to join, or just search Disney Travel Tales Podcast Clubhouse in Facebook. I can't wait to see you over there.